Do you want to level up your sound effect game? Well, I'm here to help. My name's Comfy, and I've been editing videos since before MP2s were a thing, maybe. I've gotten a lot of questions about where I obtain my sound effects, how best to implement them into videos, as well as general sound design rules I live by. Audio stuff can often feel like an unsolvable puzzle for content creators, new and experienced alike. So I'd like to try and solve some of these unmuted mysteries. In this video, we're gonna cover how to build your own personal sound effect library, how best to implement those sounds, as well as some general rules of thumb when it comes to sound design. So step into my office, baby. You and I are gonna crack this case wide open. Put on your Deerstalker hat, grab a big old magnifying glass, and watch as we explore the case of the confusing cacophony. The game is afoot. I've always wanted to say that. All right, so we're gonna break up this video into two sections. We'll start now by going over obtaining and preparing your sound effects, and later we'll investigate how I personally go about implementing those sound effects. So, are you absolutely clueless on where to get sound effects? Are you just looking for a hot lead? Well, I've got a suspicion that... Okay, am I laying it on too thick? You can tell me. Be honest. All right, so first things first. Let's say you're just starting to build your sound effect library. Where do you even begin? Well, for me, there are two main options. The first being subscription sites. Woo! Look at all these sounds. And they're all... Oh, they cost money? Cost how much? I'm mostly joking here. Sites like Motion Array, not sponsored, but they should, have been extremely helpful to me in my day-to-day editing. How about I list some of the pros and cons here? Pro! Not only does Motion Array have sound effects, but they also offer B-roll clips, video editing templates, music, and a lot more. Con. While there are loads of sound effects on offer, they can often range pretty dramatically in quality, and many of the sounds come off as really... cheesy, in my opinion anyway. Pro! With such a wide selection, you'll typically always find the kind of sound you're looking for, and everything on the site is copyright free. Con. For an annual subscription, they charge about $240, which is certainly not nothing, but compared to what a lot of other stock websites charge, it's honestly super reasonable. $35! With a membership, you have access to everything on a website like that. Though I will sort of add this caveat, I'd say if you are just beginning your content creation journey, there's likely better things to spend your money on at this stage, like hardware, microphones, stuff like that. However, if you're at a point where you're really wanting to focus on making edited content, I think buying a membership to a site like this is going to be extremely helpful. I literally use this site every day, I'm telling you. Now, I will say that the other inherent con of these kinds of sites, as a result of everything being copyright free, is that the content these sites offer up is typically all pretty generic, general, common. What I mean to say is that there definitely won't be any meme sounds on there, which is the bread and butter of a lot of editors' sound arsenals. So now it's time for me to introduce the second way I get sound effects, YouTube! People on YouTube are so dang helpful, like little junior detectives. That's right, this is still a mystery theme video, and don't you forget it! You can basically find any sound effect you want if you know what you're looking for. So let's just jump right into it. Let's say I want to find the Taco Bell ding sound effect. That one. All right, so we're gonna go up to the top bar, and I'm just gonna look for the Taco Bell sound effect. It auto-completed that for me. And right at the top, there it is, almost 6 million views. Beautiful. Now, the next step is to download this to your computer, but before we do that, I just want to sort of explore this YouTube channel, right? We got a channel with 1 million subs called Gaming Sound FX. So if you're like not sure sort of what sound effects are out there, you can very easily leave this tab open up a new tab, and just sort of stop. I don't want to hear you. And you can kind of just go to the videos, maybe sort by popular, and you can see now we have the most popular sounds that people are looking for. So like if we have, what's this? Here's the Among Us roll. That's a good one. You know, stuff like you might not have a sense of what even to Google if you were going to search for it, right? Going through and doing this sort of thing can be very helpful in finding like new exciting sound effects that you're going to use in your edits. Here we go. Let's end it with this. You're welcome. But in any case, let's get back to the Taco Bell sound. So, the next step is actually getting this thing off of YouTube. So let's follow the clues to the place that There's mysteries. So there are lots of websites that will do this for you. If you just type in YouTube MP4, that'll bring up a whole bunch of very sus looking links. But typically, as long as you don't click any pop-ups, maybe you get yourself an ad blocker, you'll be perfectly fine on any of these top results. Just be careful. I have two that I use almost all the time. I've linked those down in the description if you'd like to check them out. Also, while you're down there, I definitely think I saw a clue on the like button. You better click it to make sure, huh? Thank you. All right, so this is the site I like using the most for MP3s. It has a pretty high success rate. Sometimes you go to these sites and they don't always work 100% of the time, so I like this one because it works the most of the time for me. So all you gotta do, you go up here, you either grab the URL, I'm gonna hit Control-C to copy, or you can go over down here to the share, hit copy on there, it'll add it to your clipboard, and then you go back to this page, and you just paste it in, and I don't even need to type anything. We have Taco Bell Bong sound effect. Download. All right, so once it's done processing, you'll now be able to download this file. What I'd suggest you do right now is you're gonna make two new folders. The first is going to be for raw sound effects, and the other one is going to be for your finished sound effects. And I'll get to what that means in a minute. So now we have this raw file downloaded to our raw sound effects folder. So once it's downloaded, you're going to want to pop that file into a new project in Premiere, and then make a new sequence with it by dragging it over the little piece of paper and releasing. So now what we're going to do is take a look at this and adjust it a little bit. At the moment, this sound effect, there's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. But what we want to do is make it so that whenever you're editing, everything is as easy as possible. We want to front load a lot of this work to make it so that when you are editing, you can just go boom, 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 right? So we have this now in our sequence, right? So there are two main things that we want to look at when we are preparing our sound effects. The first being the timing. If we zoom in real close, we can see that there are a couple frames of silence before we get to the sound effect. So if I just hit play, it starts pretty quickly, but we can do better than that. I have audio scrubbing turned on, so what that means is if I click and drag on the playhead, we hear whatever frame the playhead is on, right? So similarly, we do that same thing with the left and right arrow keys. So we know by doing that, we can confirm like, hey, these first two frames have literally no audio in them. But it sounds like this third frame is the beginning of the sound. It's real subtle, but so what we're going to do is we're just going to make a cut here and bring it in 2 frames. It might not seem like a big deal, but now when you're editing, you won't have to account for this 2-frame delay. If you want to time up something like perfectly, you know what I mean? You just want to set these up so that you can drag and drop as much as possible. And that's the goal here, right? So secondly, to that end, we are also going to sort of lower the volume on this sound effect. We're going to watch the audio meter here. It gets all the way up to -3. So if we hit -0, we are clipping, and that's not good. Like if I'm going to make this a little bit louder. Just going to raise it up by 4. You could maybe hear that it got a little distorted there because it's already a pretty loud noise. By itself, this isn't too loud, but you have to remember that when you're editing for shorts, this is going to be sort of going over somebody speaking, right? So if you just put this at this volume, it's going to be probably too loud for whatever you're adding it onto, right? So what we can just do right now, we're just going to lower it a little bit. So I'm going to grab the rubber band here and kind of lower the general volume to about -5, -5.3. If you want to get real specific, you can go into the effect controls and we could just say -5. But now if I play this, we see that it kind of tops out at -9. Like -9, maybe -8. So that's a lot better. So typically the general sort of rule of thumb for where you want your audio levels, if you can manage it, you want your speaker's voice to be hovering around -6. If I know that my speakers' voices are going to be kind of hovering around 6, maybe going as high as 3, maybe going sort of as low as 9, like depending, then I don't want my sound effect to overpower that, unless that's like the point, right? But typically you want to be able to hear the sound effect and the speaker at the same time. So by lowering the volume a little bit up front, we are going to mitigate a lot of that. So you won't have to go in, drag and drop this, and then also have to think about like always like lowering it again, right? So that's sort of the rhyme and the reason behind what we're doing here, right? So now that we have prepared this, we're gonna export this guy. So you can hit Control M to export, or you can just hit the export button up here. Now, I like exporting audio as WAV files just because I'm sort of crazy. What we downloaded was an MP3, and MP3 files are compressed, while WAV files are uncompressed. However, since the original file is an MP3, you can't really up-res to WAV, to uncompressed WAV files, because that's not how anything works. Just the same, I like to save things as WAV files. If you'd like to export as high-res MP3, you can click on the format drop-down, find MP3 right there. By default, it looks like it has this 256 kilobytes per second preset, but if we want to put it at the max, you want to click on this audio drop down, find the audio bitrate drop down, and then go to 320 kilobytes per second. Perhaps you won't really notice much of a difference, but you know, this is the way you want to do it. And then you want to make sure that you are saving it in the right spot. So right now our location is pointed to where the file lives. So we're going to click on that. We're going to back out of here, find our finished sound effects folder. And then while we're here also, we're going to rename it something we're going to remember. So we're just going to delete everything. We're going to write Taco Bell Bong. But then I'm also going to add some keywords so that this is going to be a little easier for me to search later. If you wanted to type in meme, if you want to type in funny, you know, you can add all these sorts of things. I'm just going to leave it like this. And then we're going to hit save. So I am going to export this as a WAV. So we are going to hit export, give it a sec, and now it is done. So if I drag this guy in, we see that we have a new WAV file. I'm going to drop this on top of the existing file. You can just visually see that the audio is lower here. Easy peasy. What's Comfy? The most smart and handsome detective, I hear you asking.
Now that I have all these sound effects, what do I do with them?
And I'll tell you right after a word from our sponsor. Me. It's me. I'm the sponsor. If you're a content creator looking to step up their game, I have two things I'd like to quickly share with you. First, on top of my regular freelance video editing commissions, I'm now offering shorts review services. If you feel like something's missing in the shorts that you're creating and you want some serious, unbiased criticism and direction, I'll review your content and tell you where I think you can improve and what next steps I think you should take. Second, I now have a Ko-fi shop where I am offering long-form, in-depth content for people really looking to improve their editing skill set. I plan on adding a lot more content to this shop, so definitely give it a follow. Additionally, I'm going to be offering for free a large selection of the sound effects I use in my day-to-day editing to get your own sound library started off with a bang. Who did that? It's best to leave some mysteries unsolved, I guess. Anyways, that is also on my Ko-fi shop, and that is, again, free. I'd absolutely love it if you check it out. Maybe give the other videos on the site a look as well. All right, back to the video. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about how I actually use these sound effects when editing shorts. So when I think about sound design, I sort of break up my needs into three categories. These probably have official names, but this is just what I refer to them as. Number one, literal. Number two, technical. And number three, comedic. So let's break these down. Literal sound effects are things that are kind of matching what we're seeing on screen. If there's a chainsaw on screen, let's find a chainsaw sound effect. Freezing in a blizzard, use a snowstorm sound effect. These add additional depth to your videos and sort of line up with the viewer's expectations on what they might be hearing at any given moment. Number two is technical, and these sort of fill a wide range of things. When I think technical, I'm thinking things like whoosh sound effects for zooms, hits and pops for graphics and things like that. But in this category, I also include sounds that sort of don't mean anything, for lack of a better term. These are sounds that are sort of just along for the ride. I often use sounds like this to go along with inserts and scene changes, just to kind of give it a little something something, you know? And lastly, we have number three, comedic effects. This category is for effects that are going to emphasize a joke, but maybe don't specifically have anything to do with the imagery on screen. If you follow my commissioned work, you know I'm a big fan of the bamboo sound effect to kind of signify that something silly or bad has happened. I love it so much I made 4 different versions, all pitch shifted down very slightly to kind of escalate situations that are very silly or bad. Comedic effects also very often share a lot of space with the technical sound category. You can kind of blur the lines a lot here. I often use the Minecraft oof sound whenever someone or something gets hit. So now with those terms defined, let's see them in action. All right, so this is a short I created for VTuber Ruby Vox. Now, we're gonna just give this a watch first, But as we do, I want you to just sort of mentally try and keep track of how many sound effects I'm using in this 1 minute short.
Okay, yes, I did let a stranger come into my house and sleep in my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, but there's a lot more to the story than that, okay? As somebody who grew up in the hood, I don't trust people. This lady could have been trying to get me jumped and robbed, okay? What happened was, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and this lady knocks on my door, right? Well, my housemate goes and answers the door because, well, he grew up in the suburbs where everything is like totally fine and dandy and you do things like that, like open the door at 3 o'clock in the morning for strangers, right? I don't do that. You didn't hear anything, you didn't see anything, no one is home as far as I'm concerned, but he's already got the door open by the time I get out there, right? So my immediate thought is like, oh my God, what if there's like two big dudes hanging out around the corner and they're about to like jump us and come into our house? So I grab this lady, pull her into the house, shut the door and lock it, and now there's a woman in our house and I don't know what to do. We ended up letting her sleep in the bed because it was the only place where she didn't have access to open the door, just in case she did have friends waiting for us and she couldn't open the door and let them in, you know what I'm saying? So I slept on the floor in the living room that night, and by sleep I mean I laid there. I didn't sleep, it was terrifying. Don't open your doors.
All right, and you're back. Comment below what you think the number is, and I will reveal the answer in a 3, 2, 1. 25 sound effects in 60 seconds. That is almost a sound effect every 2 seconds. So there's a lot going on. So let's just sort of start at the beginning. You know what we'll do? I'm actually going to solo only the sound effects. I have them all on the same track right now, so let's just do that. So first and foremost, we have a whoosh as she zooms in from the start. I think trying any quick movement like this, adding a whoosh is going to be very effective and helpful. This is one of the technical kind, right? This is serving a purpose in just sort of making everything feel more rich. And then the Minecraft bed. So I've sort of put the Minecraft bed in here like as the joke of like, oh, I'm an adult human being and I still have like a Minecraft bed. That's sort of the joke. And then to kind of emphasize the comedy of this joke, I added this very sort of childlike little duck squeak. Like a children's toy, you know what I mean? That's sort of like trying to emphasize the comedy here. Typically, like most of my sound effects, I'm trying to make the video as funny as possible. So you'll see a lot of sound effects that are just like kind of half comedy, half serving, you know? So we have this guy, it's 3 in the morning. Oh God, everything's crazy. I've also added this sort of like wobble to it. So we have this kind of like this sort of confused little noise to kind of punctuate that point, right? We have another zoom there with I have 4 different whooshes that I use, all from motionarray.com. Not sponsored, but come on. So this is sort of a sound effect that's like kind of just because we had a scene change, like an insert, but also to kind of like, this sounds sort of gross. It's kind of like a squishy, like a that sort of a feeling. It's really only here to emphasize, oh, we're changing into a new graphic, but it can also do double work as kind of being this sort of a thing, right? This is just a little bubble kind of a noise. We're somewhere else. We have this sinister woman here, but we don't really get into the sinister sound effect until Ruby starts talking about getting jumped and robbed, right? So we have this technical sound and then, you know, these are 2 technical sounds kind of back to back. Like, I wouldn't call this a comedic sound, but it kind of like is doing the work of like setting the scene to make the viewer sort of nervous, like to give them the sense of like, uh-oh, something's off. This is a very unsettling kind of noise, right? This is straight up a comedy sound effect. I could have just made this a literal sound effect where, you know, we just have a door knock sound, but I thought it would be funny to add the vine boom for every knock. Just sort of like kind of just like making this B-roll a little sillier. We have another whoosh here, technical sound effect for a movement here. And then another scene change. Just another kind of like a bubble sound effect. This is, again, just another kind of like technical, like, hey, we have a scene change, but like, it's got this kind of nice, like, oh, maybe I collected a coin kind of feel to it. I'm trying to sort of emphasize like that, you know? This is like a good feeling. Like, oh, we're letting in people, you know, they have presents, like it's Christmas maybe. Just kind of like that sort of a thing. We have our first instance of a bamboo because she kind of starts laughing at the situation like it's ridiculous. Like, oh, okay, we're starting to get ridiculous here. We got a whoosh here because we whoosh over. The light goes out. I wanted a sound to punctuate that, so we just have a pop. Another whoosh here. Another whoosh there. And then this is the I've labeled this SpongeBob sad face. This sound effect gets a lot of mileage. So this is a sort of like, she's talking about like, what if there were two big dudes? So I found, like, to make this kind of funnier, I have a picture of a seemingly sort of frail old man, you know what I mean? To kind of like be this funny juxtapose against what is being said and what we're seeing, right? So we kind of have this sad sound effect to go along with the visual and less kind of what she's saying in this moment, because he's not a big dude at all. Just another kind of like a sound. Now we're out of this.
Our house. So I grabbed this.
We were here for like a while. Like this is a little longer than I like to hold on a clip usually. So I kind of wanted to add a noise here to make it
So I grabbed
a little more exciting to get out, just by like, you know, just a little bit. And then here, there's a woman in our house. Vine boom, boom. The vine boom might be second most used next to the bamboos. Uh-oh, something serious happened? Boom. Vine boom works as both actual dramatic emphasis and hilarious dramatic emphasis. So in this instance, it's doing the work of like, there is a woman in our house and I'm a little nervous. You know, like, oh God, what do I do? This is a tea kettle sound. I'll use this when we're hanging on the person for a little bit and the tensions are rising. And then at the end, I'm gonna play this again, but at the end here, we cut that off with sort of the resolution, which is kind of like a silly thing. Because, well, I mean, not silly, but just sort of like, well, I resigned myself. I did what I had to do kind of energy. But it also does kind of double work of cutting off this, the kettle, which I think is funny, right? So let's see.
just in case she did have friends waiting for us and she couldn't open the door and let them in, you know what I'm saying? So I slept on the floor in the living room.
So that kind of cuts it off. Instead of just ending, like if I just like muted this,
And
you
she
know?
couldn't open the door and let them in, you know what I'm saying? So I slept on the floor.
So I don't think that's nearly as impactful, and it also kind of covers up the fact that we just cut it off. Because even though the whole point is that we're cutting it off abruptly because it's funny, if there's nothing else to kind of mask it, then it kind of sounds like
And
wrong.
let them in, you know what I'm saying? So I slept
To me, it just sounds like, oh, it just stopped without any intent. But if we have
them in, you know what
this,
I'm saying? So I slept on
it's like, oh, okay, it was on purpose, kind of energy.
that night. And by sleep, I mean, I laid there. I didn't sleep. It was terrifying. Don't open your
And then these last two bits I have are slap. So we have this slap, and I think this slap, which is probably, yeah, I've sped this up to 110. When you speed things up in Premiere, it changes how the sound pitch works. So if I do that, you know, you can kind of see the difference pretty clearly. I do that a lot where if I don't have a sound ready to go, but I kind of want the same sound effect, but just like a little more intense, I'll just speed it up a little bit, and then you get a lot of mileage out of the same sound effects, right? So we have the hits here because this last little bit is sort of a little more intense, and we're also zooming in closer. I like whenever we cut to a closer shot of somebody, I think it can be very funny to add these hits, because it's like, oh, we're getting more intense, I'm closer. Oh, it's more intense. I'm getting even closer still kind of energy. So that is this short in a nutshell. This has a lot of sound work for 1 minute, but I think kind of the more that you do this and the more that you practice, like kind of using the sound effects you have when you feel like, oh, this sort of a sound effect might be good to have. Let me go like search for it and like add it to my arsenal. You know what I mean? I think those sorts of moments will come up organically for you, and this will all sort of strengthen your entire package as a, you know, content creator, video editor. Just having like these sound effects that you have curated, because like you might not like the sound effects that I use and vice versa. You know, it's like whatever you think is good and funny is the most important thing, right? So just like fine tune your content for you and what you think is good and funny, and you will go very, very far. And there you have it, my little Watsons. Go off and solve your own audio mysteries. If you want to get clued in on more of my content, investigate this video here, where I cover some real life film techniques you can use in your videos.